Hello everyone. What we'll do is we'll kind of wait 5 minutes, right? Just kind of see if more people are gonna show up, and if not, that's okay. We'll go with the whatever people have showed up so far. So just hang in there, and we'll start at 35. I think we have people coming in. So again, we'll just wait for 5 minutes tops, and then we can then start. We can then start. That way, it gives everyone a chance, even if they're a little late.
No dicen, está la constipada.
¿Y por qué no te conectas?
No, porque a mí te permite la prendido 3 horas.
Hi, hello everyone. We're very happy to have you. As I was telling people who joined in already, we'll be starting in 5 minutes. What I'll do is for a little bit of engagement, I'll put up a poll, right? Just to kind of get to know you guys a little better. It's just a quick question as to what sector do you guys work in? I think you should be able to see it in the chat, and if you aren't, just let me know and I'll fix it, I guess. As I'm adding the poll, I am realizing I should have added a option for other. That is okay. So I think just go with what is the best defining answer to this. Okay. I think we'll get started. I think we've reached our maximum participants that were going to show up, and we're very grateful for the people that did come. We're very actually happy about that. What we'll do is I'll quickly introduce myself, and then my colleague Saddam, who's going to be my co-presenter today, will talk about himself. Okay, and then we can then very quickly, we'll try to not drone on. I know the session says 90 minutes, but I know no one wants to sit through 90 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll go at a pace that makes sense to everyone and try to maybe wind up everything in an hour and a half, right now, and in 5 minutes, right? So just to quickly introduce myself. So hi, hello, my name is Heena. I am a research and policy associate at the Research and Development Solutions. That is a for-profit consultancy based here in Pakistan. Our main areas of work are health, um, immunization, women economic empowerment. We work in climate, and most importantly, we work in to improve the urban lives, the lives of people in urban slums, right? And that is all there is to me. I can get Saddam to introduce himself.
Haider, and I work with Urban Impact Lab as team lead. And my work in the lab specialize in basically embedding data-driven decision making in our programming intervention, as well as generating evidence around our intervention, and basically looking at how we can scale up those intervention into a broader development area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So what the how things will go are we will quickly talk about the objectives, what we plan to achieve through this workshop. We will talk about what are the current pitfalls that all of our programs are falling through, even though we will keep saying the word Pakistan. This is true for most LMICs. This is true for most global context, right? We will talk about how our traditional population estimates are failing our programs. We will talk about how RADS is using building level geospatial analysis to supplement M&E, right? We will talk about the innovation that we're trying to bring in using small area estimates to improve our predictions at a fraction of a cost. And we will talk about how does all of it tie together when we're talking about a real life context, right? Real life model. Just very quickly, I think you and I all have already done the poll, so we're good on that. And thank you very much for everyone who's answered. I will be putting up another poll, and again, just take a second. Just it helps us understand what are the issues that you guys face when launching your programs. So it should show up in the message chat function. Just go in there. And this time I did not forget to add an other option. There are not a lot of options, but there is an other option. So that is slightly better than I did last time. So we'll just give it a second. And let everyone vote. Okay, so it's still changing a little bit. But I think lack of population data is going to win. I think that is something that people from South Asia, right, our LMICs, maybe even Sub-Saharan Africa, not really sure about Latin America. I think Latin America is doing a much better job than we are. But lack of population data is a common problem. It is a common problem that we can all empathize with, and it makes sense to all of us. And that is a problem that we had, right? As I mentioned, we primarily focus on working in urban slums, and urban slums and in LMICs are not a great combination. Now you have these dense pockets where accurate numbers of people who live there are just not available to you. They might be there with the government. The governments are very iffy about sharing that data, so you're just stuck having to do a lot of guesswork. Now, what we'll do is in our quick presentation. We will talk to you about the current challenge. And again, I've mentioned that it says Pakistan, but it is a global problem, right? How the denominator is in there. We'll talk about what that means. We will then talk about in part 2, which is where Saddam will take over, which is going to be the geospatial solution that we have. In part 3, we will talk about how we are supplementing our MNE with small area estimates. And then the final thing that I'm kind of very excited about is the real application of all of this into our current PSC model, right? So what I will then do is I'm going to hand it over to Saddam, right? Saddam is going to be taking you through the rest of the presentation, and you won't hear a peep from me until the section on small area estimates. Go take your turn, Saddam. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Heena. Thank you for the brief introduction. Yeah, so setting up a conversation, I'll basically build up a context of how this work developed organically at RADS, catering our programmatic needs, and how we think it can now feed into the broader development sector problem. So in Pakistan, generally population data is collected by Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, and the census is conducted every 10 years or so, and even by then getting the data to public access takes quite a bit of time. So even once the data is accessible, there are district level estimates on different indicators, but in terms of programming, when you are looking at sub district level data or union council boundary, or for that matter, if one is interested in looking into household level data, that's usually is not available to most of the organization that work in the development sector. So I'll open this section by posing the very same question that we were facing as to how we define an effective program, or if we have done an intervention, how do even we assist if it was like a success, if it's like feasible for a scale up or no. So moving on to the second slide. Yeah, basically it's the sort of same question that we were facing, like how do you even categorize your program as a success or as a failure. So basically posing a very simple question as of to how do you define a successful program. So you basically have two scenarios, and we would like to know from you guys what do you guys think is like, in which scenario the program is a success. Like, given very basic information from top of your head, what do you guys think scenario A is a good intervention or scenario B is a good intervention? So we will like you guys to vote on it, and then we can take the conversation in context to how you people respond.
I think people are smarter than us. They know that we're going to be tricking them, so they're all choosing scenario A, even though the number is smaller. They are very much aware of what's coming up.
Yeah, I think so far we have like people think that scenario B is a good intervention, whereas 33% people think scenario A is a good intervention. Yeah. So just given I feed a very basic information as to what the denominator of your intervention was. Like if you are catering 1,500 people out of 2,500 people, it's like 60% of the coverage. Whereas like from the apparent 2,000 look like a good intervention, but if we look at the denominator of the population, which is like 10,000 is roughly like 20% of the coverage rate. So the whole scenario kind of switch as to how you define a successful intervention, given that you don't know the denominator of your coverage area. So going forward, most of our debate will be focused as to how we measure coverage and how that feeds into our broader evaluation or impact assessment of different intervention or large scale program. Yeah. So that question sort of leads into what option we have in terms of lack of data. So either if I am a program manager and I have to implement a large scale program, basically I have two option A, whether I spread my resources across the whole area where my program impact would be minimal. Option two is either I concentrate my resources on a small area, but then I would be uncertain as to how much people would I reach. So it's always the question of how do you categorize your program as a good program. So basically, in Pakistan, in context of Pakistan, they have been very large, a number of large scale programs. But when you look into survey data, administrative national level survey data, so for example, there have been a lot of investment in terms of programming in nutrition and immunization in Pakistan. But if you look into national level data sets and then you analyze it, you'll basically see very minimal or as to no impact of those programming reflecting into national data set. So how does this like sort of fail our measurements? So there could be, due to the lack of true denominator, high coverage programs may be reaching very tiny population as you don't know how many people actually you are looking at. Or maybe there could be a case of low impact area may have massive unreached population, and then obviously post programming scenario where you are doing cost per beneficiary analysis, that could be misleading as to how many people you actually catered out of how many was the actual population. And then sort of scaling those program up to district level or beyond district level sort of become misleading, and it sort of gets into a paradox. Yes. So now we will basically come to what's the solution that we have came up to based on our different experiences in Pakistan, especially one in Orangi, Karachi. Orangi town is one of Asia's largest slum, and we were implementing a large scale program there. And the issue that we faced was that UC level census data is not really readily available. And even if you approach the Bureau of Statistics, it takes like months and months to even get basic statistic. Then even given you have like a figure on as how much people live there, there's no idea as of to how the population is distributed across the geography. And then in terms of program implementation, it's always arrow in the black. So it's mostly based in ground truth or the team's personal experience. And as the impact measurement says, it's mostly around guesswork. Yes. So what we sort of learn through the whole process and sort of develop different tools. So we had the same very question. If there's not like readily population data available, how can you estimate population with different open source data that's available? So we started with a very basic question as to if we want to estimate population in a certain area, what are the things that we would be looking into? So the very naive question was like, where do people live? People live in their homes. And then we try to look as to what are the different data sets that can answer these questions. So there are multiple large, big data that sort of was, I would say, helpful in a sense, like different companies like Google, Microsoft, and different maps. they sort of do building analysis. So they detect building footprints and building rooftops from satellite imageries, and then that data is sort of available for public and open access. So one of the data set that we work with is open building data set. And then we niche down to the question, like, for example, let alone a developed country, but an LMICs, there are a lot of areas where there are high rises, at least there are double stories, even in urban slums. And then we sort of added on top of it. So okay, now we have number of households that live in the very area, but now there could be multi-story buildings. So then we layered a different data set that caters as to what's the average height of building in that area. And then when we sort of expanded our simulations to a broader area, then there was a broader question of there's always mixed use areas. So we have residential areas, we have commercial areas, and then we have mixed use areas. How do we classify them? And that we sort of came up with the question, like on Google Maps, everyone have pinned their businesses. So for example, all of us uses Google Map as to find where is the nearest ATM, where is the nearest restaurant. So we basically extract POIs from Google Maps and then triangulate it into different subset as to if a certain area have like a pharmacy and it has ATM, it has a bank, it have a couple of restaurants, we classify that area as a commercial resident, commercial geography, and then screen it out of our population estimate. And then once now we know in a certain area how many housing units are there, so then we cross triangulate that with the household count that we have in our national administrative data. So by census we know what's the average family size in a particular district. So we sort of use all these big data set and cross triangulate it with admin data to come up with a rough estimate of how many people can actually live in this very area. And that sort of give us a really good start as to planning our program and intervention, and then eventually scaling it up. Next slide. Yeah, so this is one of the example that we have from Orangi town, Karachi. So initially we have different estimates as of to how many people live there. So the district government have different estimates as to how many people live in Orangi. Then from national data, if there was something reported that have a very different picture of it, then there are also some data on population count coming from Pakistan Election Commission, so that's a completely different data set. So and then we have a ground presence in Orangi. So we have been working there from 90s. 1990s from the Orangi pilot project. So we have different exercising going on where we had like counting basically the number of meters in Orangi, like electricity meter, and then simply triangulating roughly how many people would be living. So all these estimate had a very different idea of how many people actually live there. So when we did our calculation, now we know how many people roughly live in Orangi, and not just a ballpark figure, but actually a density map of where this population is skewed. And then if I have to do like effective programming, like if I have to do a small scale immunization program, I know where the density is, and with the scarce resources, where can I direct my program as to achieve maximum impact. And then obviously if I am into research and measurement, I can go and assess with that specific area how impactful was an intervention. So now not just knowing how many people live there, I exactly know where do they live, so I can direct my resources to areas where it can have maximum impact with efficiencies. And there are certain byproducts which sort of help us in a survey. So in doing so, we also get building footprint analysis, which Hina down the line will explain how we use it in our sampling. So in programming doing randomization is quite a bit of a problem given your sample is already pre-selected or a certain area, but within the very locale, how do you do random sampling? So given we know every building in the area and we have geotagged it, so we sort of it pushes us toward doing I think there are some questions. I can take the question at the end of the session if that works, Hina.
I think once your section ends and mine start, we can then basically deal with that. So you can actually just answer Talha's question before we move on to the next small layer estimates.
Yeah, sure. So we do get like building footprint analysis, and then we also know as to how confident the model was in predicting it's actually a structure, and then we have like area of those structures. So these are the sort of things that lead the conversation into what actually can be built upon this infrastructure. So and in doing so, we know like apart from population estimate, we have building density. So if we kind of compare the previous map with the blue one, we can see the population is the buildings are skewed in a very different way, whereas we layer the height and actual do the actual population estimate, it's called of distributed in a different way. And then we also get products like height estimates, so we know where are high rises in the very same locality and all of these things. So at the end of the presentation, I'll be basically nudging towards what can be actually built on these on this architecture. So triangulating all of these data, we ourselves aim to sort of come up with more socioeconomic indicator as to estimating poverty on grid level, estimating electricity, database of indicator that can be preemptively used before programming and give you a good chance of before even getting into the field, getting everything right.
Okay, so what was going to happen
Next,
is
Hina.
in the next section, Saddam is going to go in more detail, and then again, if anyone has any questions, just like Talha, just drop them in the chat box, and we will try to reply as we go along. This is going to be a very casual session, so just don't feel bad about raising your hand or interrupting midway. Yeah. So this is where my good friend Saddam is going to give you more.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we use open building data set that's published by Google time to time. So far, it have detected around 1.8 billion infrastructure across different continents. So it's not just, for example, relevant to global South or Africa. It sort of have indicators across the globe, so covering Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and even the Caribbean. And it sort of cover around 58 million kilometers square of area where it have detected building with different confidence level. And as I mentioned, it has like 1.8 billion building detections. And and this data is refreshed every 6 months right now. And basically when you sort of scroll down through the actual database, you can see which one is the latest version of the data set and when was time. So the whole hierarchy, the whole history of the data set upgradation is there, and it's refreshed by region, sometime even by country. So all of these information are available there. And then, as I mentioned, within the data set, there is confidence as of to how much the model was confident in predicting it was a structure. So basically, before using it, you can set a criteria. Okay, if the model was not confident, like 80%, I'm not recognizing that as a structure. And then if, for example, you are working in a residential area and there comes a structure whose footprint is around 100 kilometer square or meter square or something, you can basically even drop based on that, and you sort of get a very clean data set. And then, as I mentioned, we basically use point of interest analysis, for which we use Google POI and Google Play Google Place API, which let us extract POIs across any polygon that we specify. And then we categorize the geography into different commercial area or either residential area. And then within the residential area, we basically triangulate all these data sets. So open building data set, POIs data set, and then height data set. And we basically get the number of housing unit that exist in that very grid. And the grid is very much customizable. So when we do district level analysis, we use like a 1 by 1 kilometer square grid. But if we are doing like a UC or sub-tehsil level analysis, we use like 100 grid. So the granularity of the data lies within your hand. So it's customizable as to at which level you want to see the population estimates. And as I said, we use height-based classification if as to it was a single story, multi-story, commercial and mixed use that come from our POI analysis. And then we basically use census data as of to how what's the average household size in that very locality. And it gives us a rough estimate of how many people can live in the same grid housing units. Next. Yes. So again, coming back to the very poll that we started off. So before these type of intervention, like before geospatial analysis, if I'm reaching to 1,000 people in a program, and I know from here and there that roughly 1,500 people live in that very area. It shows like 67% coverage, and it sounds like a success. But if I have like an after geospatial analysis, and now I know there are actually 8,000 people that live in that very locality. So it's like a 12.5% coverage. So that really put a question as to, is your model really feasible for a scale up or no? So the whole point of the coverage and denominator sort of start making sense as to how you do your measurement and coverage across programs. And then obviously it had real world implication as to how you allocate your budget, how you design your program, how you basically keep a success matrix that reflect your impact. Next slide. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of things that can be made on this infrastructure. So right now, us ourselves are looking into how we can integrate mobile data into population estimates, sort of also not just knowing how many people live there, but actually overlaying simulations as to what are the gender dynamics in that very locality. What the so basically layering on demographic data on it, and then mobile coverage penetration, internet coverage penetration, real-time population fluctuation tracking. So right now our data basically population estimate basically tell you the capacity of people that can live in very area. But once we have like these sort of real-time data integrated into the model, we can actually see how many people like in and out migration, what's the population fluctuation in that very area in real time. And then obviously we can add other satellite imageries on it and do temporal analysis as to how, so for example, how's the gray structure expanding and how it's related to the population. And for example, we work in health, so how does it have implication for health in that specific area. And obviously then adding like normative land use classification context to it. So there are a lot of things that can be added to it. Like there are multiple big data set that are available there. Like I myself have been looking at Meta has a lot of open access data set as to electricity city penetration, as to poverty estimation by grid. So all of these data set can be triangulated into the same way infrastructure, given we have laid down the estimates for it.
Thank you very much. That then does conclude the geo building the analysis section. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or just like unmute your mic. I think we're just the right size groups for that to be feasible. And if no, then we can then move on to the small area estimates. I think Talha is asking, will we be able to do data analysis? Okay, so what we can potentially do is towards the end, because we didn't really want to go into too much detail, otherwise that would be like a 4-hour session. We will put up Saddam's email. So I would strongly recommend just kind of get in touch with him, and you guys can set up any session or like any other additional details you might need can then be answered from that. Okay, I think we're good. We'll just basically move on. So the next section is small area estimates, right? Now with small area estimates, we're using them as game changers. We're using them as solutions to a lack of data along with lack of population data that is already existing. So the idea with small area estimates is, and it's maybe I'm going to assume that you guys we're not like there might be people who already are very aware of it. Some people might not be very aware of it. I'm right kind of in the middle. We have a separate team that deals with small area estimates. So again, if anyone has any questions, our emails will be at the end, and we will link you to the smart people in our organization that will be able to answer your question better than us. But the idea with small area estimates is that it's a statistical technique, right, that allows you to come up with reliable estimates for places where you don't have data. It's like smart guessing, but with using math to back it up. So what happens is you went out and you had a large area and you went in and you did your sampling, right? Now you have data collectively about 3,000 people, 3,000 households, and that looks really good on paper. But if I come up to you and I say, hey, could you tell me the malnutrition rate in a specific neighborhood? Now, when you look at your data, you go, I only have 5 houses from that data, from that whole neighborhood, sorry. And you would not really be able to give me a malnutrition value because you would say, I don't have enough confidence interval on that. That is just not enough for me to give you an estimate for it. What we do with small area estimates is we say, let me look at similar neighborhoods within my sample where I do have data about it. And then what we do is we use their strength and we strengthen our estimate here. And that is a basic idea. So this mostly helps us with evaluation of our program. And as we will talk about as we go, it helps us make more accurate claims, right? So the way the SAE, small area estimates, work is that you have direct estimates from your sample data, right? That's the 5 houses that you did collect data from. We're not ignoring that. We're going to take that. We also then have indirect estimates from similar area that had similar characteristics, the same population densities, the same poverty profile, the same number of roads, right? Or whatever other estimators you're looking at. We're then also compounding on top of that auxiliary variables. So you basically are looking at infant mortality. Maybe areas are sharing the same infant mortality, same educational level, same socioeconomic indicators, right? And then you're adding on to random effects to account for area-specific variations. And you're taking it all together, and you can come back to me and you can say, hey, look, in this neighborhood that you only had data about 5 people, this is the malnutrition rate, right? And what that does is the whole concept is you're using information from similar areas with comparable characteristic to strengthen the estimates for area with limited data. And I think as people who might be working at LMIC's, limited data is very much our reality. I think we're more shocked when we have actual data about things. The basic concept of SAE, and again, we're trying to very quickly just give you a rough idea what we're doing, and more data will technically be available, is this is the SAE model. The theta represents the guy that you care about, the variable that you care about, right? You then have your fixed effects, right, which are your auxiliary variables. You are looking at your random area effect, and E is your sampling error. In plain English, what you're saying is that your area estimate is your limited data plus what we learned from similar areas, and then you make statistical adjustments for local conditions. Agreed? Why do we like this? Why are we going with it? as Saddam has mentioned, we're working in urban slums. Not only in Karachi, we're working in urban slums all over, like in Punjab, and urban slums are really not known for their abundance of data. There's a lot of uncertainty around it. So when we go in and we start looking at the smallest level of division that we have in Pakistan, which is called the Union Council, a UC, and we want to start estimating our program's effectiveness at a UC level, the small area estimates allow us to actually get that done. The understanding is that before SAE, the way that you were operating is you would say, we have improved health in District X. That's it. That was it. That's the best you could do. You could say, we have taken family contraceptive utilization from 12% to 16%, and that would be it. But with SAE, what you can then do is, yes, fine, there has been improvement, but that instrument, like that improvement is this much in this UC and this much in that UC and this much in that UC. So instead of looking at the data collectively, which then hides smaller UC level, district level, and not district, but sub-district level patterns, we're able to say, you know what, our program did really well in UCF, but it didn't do well in UCC. And then you can, as the program person, go in and drill in as to what must have worked, what didn't really work, right? So you know exactly where to scale. Secondly, as I've already covered, our program worked somewhere, right? Our program would be good enough with previous monitoring program evaluations. But what now we're doing is that we're saying that, hey, if you do the same thing here and here, it's going to work 23% better if people are more educated or the gender ratio is this specific amount, because we're able to disaggregate the data to a smaller level. And then when we're answering the main question where we get asked every single time, should we scale this? Will this be effective on a larger scale? I can then very confidently, not very confident, 95% confidence intervals, say that, yes, you can scale the model for UCA, but just go back and redesign it for UCB, right? And again, at any point, if I'm speaking too fast, which I tend to do, just let me know and I will slow down a little. And yeah, so it's basically has changed our program from a yes/no question into a detailed roadmap for replication and scaling. Going forward, we've already have covered that, which is basically how the old M&E questions they're there, but we now have new M&E answers that small area estimates allow us to do it. And the wonderful thing about it is it's not that costly. It's not that costly. If I go to my boss and I say I want to do this whatever thing, the first question we all get asked is how much will it cost us? It does have a cost incurred to it because yes, it's data analyses, but it is very much doable with existing data sets, with this data set that are available to you. And you're basically you're building on top of that, you're basically using smarter technology to answer age-old questions, right? So we have a very smart team here. It's called the Knowledge Unit team. And what they have done is that they have done small area estimates for Pakistan. So these math might not really make sense to you, and it's 100% okay if they don't. But the basic idea was that you had the Human Development Index, and I think that is calculated by UNDP, but it is not calculated as frequently as you would like, right? And it is calculated at provincial level. So as you and I both know, in any country, the top of my province is very different from the middle of my province, and it's very different from my lower end of the province, right? So what they did is they were able to use small area estimates. So they did have data on sort of the Human Development Index is calculated health, education, and the third one is completely slipping my mind. It was health data, health. Saddam, if you want to chime in on that one, I should have written that somewhere down. It is health, it is education, and then I think the third one is, I want to say life expectancy. Health, income, education. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Health, income, and education. Yes. So what they were able to do is they were able to use the data that might not have at the same granularity level. Some of it was there, some of it wasn't there, and they were able to use small area estimations by borrowing strengths from other data sets, by clumping areas that looked similar in profile, and were able to then produce these HDI indexes for district level, sub-district level, right? And I think they even have gone lower than that. So when now I'm looking at a province, I can actually go and say, hey, you know what? If you look at this here, this is still technically one province for people who are not from Pakistan, right? But this last province here is not doing great. is not doing great. And right next to it, you have Karachi, who is doing definitely much, much better. So that granularity is basically being produced from existing data sets. There is a cost, but at a very little cost as compared to you having to go out there and survey everyone, right? So the technical data is from within Karachi. They're able to look at Karachi East and Karachi Central and Karachi North and Karachi West, which is something that wasn't really possible before. And what they are unearthing are the massive intra-district variations. Massive intra-district variations, which is, if I just go on paper to Karachi and I'm like, I'm going to implement a program, I'm going to increase I'm going to reduce malnutrition by 15%. And when it comes to having to allocate resources or even measure my impact, I do understand now the differences between Karachi and how that's going to change my final answer. So what we're now then doing is, and this is where it gets a little more interesting, is again, this is very, very technical stuff. We're just going to skip over that. And nope, let's not go over the modeling and everything. But we're basically going to talk about how we're all putting all of it together, as I will talk about in the next model. So as we've mentioned, we are going to urban slums. That's where we're mainly working. The main ambit of our work is health improvements, right? We work in 6 fields. We work in, technically 4 fields. Let's just clump them together. We have non-communicable diseases. We look at hypertension reduction. We look at diabetes reduction. We have maternal and neonatal health. So we look at family planning as a product of that. We look at ANC utilization, PNC utilization. We look at child immunization and child malnutrition. So now what we're doing is we're going to urban slums, right? And Orangi being one of them. We are going to be reaching 450,000 people in both, like combined in Karachi, which is southmost in Pakistan, and then Punjab's Rawalpindi, which is right in the middle in the center. So when we go in, the number one issue that you have is, first of all, how many people should we be reaching? Where should the program be conducted? So this is where Saddam's work comes in. Saddam is able to come up with maps, and he can tell me, Heena, look, this is the entire Dokhasu area, which is where we want to be implementing our intervention. Do you see this? These are your dense clumps of populations. You can reach 100,000 people, right, for a fraction of a cost there, versus, hey, you can reach 100,000 people that are spread over a larger area. So number one thing that does is the geospatial building analysis data set is helping me plan my whole program. So now that I've actually said, okay, fine, I now have my areas down, how do I go in and then do my baseline, which is going to then help me see if my program has had an impact. So randomization and sampling is, again, Saddam has touched on this. How do you actually go ahead and do that when it is truly random, when it is truly a representative sample? So the nice thing about using geospatial analyses is that you've seen Saddam's map. Now every house is mapped. Every house is coded. If I will go in and I say, hey, I want to pick up 5,000 houses, you do your sample power calculations, you have 5,000 houses that you're going to need. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to come up with stupid rules as to go there every 5th house, whatever that might be. Every house has a Google code, a latitude, longitude attached to it. I can actually randomly generate a list of 5,000 houses, and that's it. That is my sampling frame. So when I'm looking at my monitoring, when I want to see that, hey, have I covered all of those houses, it is easy for me to do, because every day when that data is coming in, I can track it against, these are the places that I had to go. How far have I actually gone? What are the places am I missing? And then the beautiful thing here is that everyone then does have an equal chance of being picked, which is what random sampling requires of you. So I'll give you a little bit more context as to what our PhD model is, because I do find it very interesting, but I am biased because it is our own work. So you guys can let me know if it actually is interesting, or am I just being like my mother? But my mother keeps me grounded. She keeps me humble. I think every single time I feel too good about myself, she's like, nope, come back down to earth. So what we're doing is, as I mentioned, we're going to be reaching 450,000 people, right? And we will be going through systematic house-to-house primary healthcare delivery with complete digital integration. One of the issues that we have in Pakistan, and I cannot speak for the rest of the countries, I've not looked at the data, is we have very little utilization of primary health care. Right. In Pakistan, it is very common. If you're obese, you are very much on the track to being diabetic. They will not. They will not go to the doctor. They will not make any lifestyle modifications. They will not get started on medicine. They will go to the doctor when their vision starts going. They will go to the doctor when they start fainting. They will go to the doctor once their foot is infected. And at that point, two things have happened. I mean, a lot of things have happened. This might be costly in terms of human life. It is costly because that man is now, or woman is going to be going to the tertiary care. You are overburdening a structure that is already overburdened, right? And the third thing is, it's gonna cost him so much more. It's gonna cost him so much more than if he had just gone and seek that primary health care in the beginning of it all. So our model is trying to see how can we improve that. So we have introduced this API model, where API stands for older sister in Urdu, right? My sister calls me API. So our APIs, and we have male rehabers, we call them rehaber, which is people who guide the way. We'll go to people's houses, and then we're registering those people. We're basically building entire profiles for each house, and we're screening them for these 6 common illnesses or conditions we've mentioned: diabetes, hypertension. We're looking at their family planning need, ANC, PNC, and then for children, we're looking at child nutrition and immunization. Based on that, we're basically connecting them to the PHC, primary healthcare facilities. We've mapped all of those. Again, those are all geotagged. And we're then getting to actually leave their house and go seek that care. And our API and Radber's job is to basically be that vessel of information that goes in, brings information back to us as to, hey, you know what? That house has this many people. We feel that 7 of them have these issues. And then our API and Radber's job is to go to them and get them to actually seek that care where referrals are made, and we then are keeping track of whether those referrals have actually been used or not, right? So it's the whole complete closed loop feedback system. What we are doing so far is we're trying to digitalize this as much as we can. As much as we can. I know that some of you lot might be doing program at a much larger scale, but with the program that we're doing and the complexity that we're dealing with, we understand that the more we're going to automate and digitalize and clean up our act in the beginning, the easier it's going to be for us to make a program that then can be scaled down the road. So we are getting every house to be GPS coordinated. We're tracking them. We're giving each house a unique identifier. We have demographic profiles for each house against linked to their unique IDs, right? We're looking at each individual person's health. We're looking at their service history. How much are they tracking, right? And we're looking at every interaction, time-stamped, location verified, and outcome recorded. We are using APIs and rehabers, which are low education members of that community. We're training them to actually go in there and then be the voice that gets them to actually use PHC. The way that this works is that we are testing 4 arms. We're basically testing what is your utilization, what is the different outcomes in health if somebody is basically referred to a public sector or they self-assign themselves to a public sector. We also have private sector providers, but we now have actually gone one step further, and we have also developed an app that helps private providers provide standard care. What happens is, again, these are very common LMICs issues. One doctor to another doctor, the standard of care varies significantly. It might even vary significantly based on whether he woke up in a good mood or not. So what we have done is, using national guidelines, we've developed a healthcare provider app. So if I go to Dr. XYZ and my API has referred me because I have high risk profile for like diabetes, I would get the same standard of care as the 7,000th person and the 5,000th person. So that's what we're doing. So we're going to have 2 different arms. We have private sector, no apps, and then we have private sector with an app. And we will be able to track utilization, actually have referral completion. We're going to also be able to track follow-ups, how many times people did go back. And then the final thing that we're also piloting is telemedicine. So if people fail to keep going to PHC, you've sent your API, you've made your automated calls, you've made your human calls, and they're still not going, we're then offering those people telemedicine. So that's as you can see, there's a lot of bits and bobs that are moving. So the digitalization, is needed. How are we now bringing all of it together? Tom talked about building population data set. I talked about SAE and enhanced targeting, and then we're going to be doing digital PhD delivery. So what we can then do is, is because every household is tagged, we have a real-time denominator. I know exactly that if I want to go to a specific union council UCA, I know exactly that there are 32,497 houses. So when I come in at the end of the day and my monitoring job is to track how the completion, the coverage, I can then say out of 30,497 houses, how many houses have been reached. And I am going to be making sure that every house is touched. I'm going to be making sure that houses that are on the fringe are not being left behind just because they're too far or they're just too out of the way. Then what I'm doing is once the data starts coming in, when I have programmed data, I will be able to talk to people and give them UC level, really small level estimates as to, hey, look, we were able to increase family planning or like contraceptives by 12% in this UC here, but 67% in the other. Like I really wish 67%, 60%, 67% there. And then we can start asking as to why is that the case? What is different here that is not working here? So instead of basically kind of keep knocking on the same door and trying to make it work, I can go to this UC and say, I need to do something differently. I need to utilize my money better here. And maybe that small change is going to be the difference between what worked here and what didn't work here. Finally, we're combining all of this with digital PhD delivery. We're making it very little, like as less human resource intensive as we can, right? We will have real-time tracking and we will basically be able to create a complete loop. So when we're looking at the model, or basically when we're dealing with the data, it is a self-correcting cycle of information coming in. If I have somebody who isn't availing the follow-up, I know exactly because that house gets mapped on my little map. I can go, okay, this person, I need to do something with that person. I already have protocols built in. I don't even have to tell the API. I don't have to tell her go there. The app automatically tells her, hey, look, it has been 7 days. This person hasn't taken their referral. She wakes up in the morning, opens her app, and she can see, I need to go to this house, right? So again, I think what we have learned from previous, as Saddam has mentioned, these have been iterations of so much work, you guys, so much work, so much having to hit our head against the wall to make it make sense, to now having developed this model that does make our life considerably easier. I think I promised that we would be done in an hour, and I'm still talking, so that is not a good sign. Very quickly, I think we're just like 2 or 3 slides left into it, and we will then open the floor to questions. If you guys don't have questions, that'd be okay. But basically, what we're now doing is that we're going from guesswork to GPS verified, and I think very much that that's how it should be. It is 2025, and it is not, I think, acceptable anymore for people to still be doing paper-based service, for people to still be doing, as the word says, guesswork. As to, I think there are this many people there, right? So we estimate traditional program monitoring was we estimated we reached 60% of the target population. But now that I have a GPS verified approach, when I'm going in, not blind, but completely informed as to this is my target demographic, this is my target area, I can then say, hey, we've reached exactly this many individuals, and this is how many households they were in, and this is across this many UCs, right? And I will have real-time coverage, which then helps with the monitoring, and then I have my small area estimates that help with my evaluation of it all, right? I can actually even, and this is again, the dream for somebody who is using data to then make informed decisions. I can also even have household level data. I can have individual level data, and I can have outcome level data, right? So and that's going to be it. That is going to be it. I have been told by a lot of people I talk too much. I agree with their assessment. So I'm going to try to wind this up. The key takeaways are that what you need to be doing here is that you need to be rethinking rather than inventing new things. These tools are now available, right? The data is still there. For example, for small error estimates, they're there. The Google building dataset is there. How are you using it to kind of mush them together, as we've done with what we've called the triple innovation, right? You have your building-based population estimates that is then basically that are complementing your small area estimates. And then if I go in with the sole target that I have to get higher primary healthcare utilization in this area, I really want to, in the long term, save them a lot of cost, a lot of, dallies, whatever that might be. That's my goal. I need to basically be using all of these in conjunctions. And the idea is that you need to go from estimates to exactness, from high cost to high tech, right? And from assumptions to analytics. And the replication promise, like the replication potential, is quite there. Nothing that we've mentioned here is something that is only available for Pakistan. The Google building estimates are globally available. The small area estimate is a well-documented technique, right? Obviously, you're going to have to refine it a little bit for your local context, but it is very much doable. When you basically go in and you start to digitalize these things, it can very much easily be replicated across any context where precise population data and cost-effective service delivery matter. And I think they matter every potential where. What we'll do is we'll end here. These are our contact details. If you have any questions, any concerns, any other thing that you need clarification on, please feel free to reach out. Right? If we don't have the answer, we'll put you in touch with people who do have the answers within the organization. And that is it. Does anybody have any question? Otherwise, thank you very much for actually showing up. It is very heartwarming to see people interested in the way things are being done in our small country of Pakistan. Okay. Let me just check if there's any questions. Otherwise, so we don't currently work in air pollution. But that is definitely interesting. That is something that we would definitely I don't think anyone would say no to it. It does have real impact on human health. And if that is something that you're working on and you would like to maybe see how we could collaborate together, then definitely drop us an email. I think Saddam, you might be muted. So
One second. Hi Talha. Yeah, so RADS is not working on something like air pollution directly, but we are looking into sort of collecting subnational and even sub-district air pollution data from different APIs and then sort of link it with different available data set at the intersection of health and see what different implication that hold for different sort of research. So no, not directly, but it's something that we are looking at. And you can always unmute your mic and ask any question that you have.
again, this session is recorded, and as soon as the session ends, I will get our comms team to email the slides and the recording to you a lot. I think we've made good time. I think this is the first time I've held on to my promise of trying to finish it in an hour, and we've done it. We are again want to finally thank you very, very much for showing up. It has been a pleasure having this session. Thank you very much for the people who have asked questions and that have participated in the poll.
I think there's someone typing in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's okay. Well, we're gonna be here. We're gonna be here. If somebody, again, it's just I'm sure that people have work to do. If you want to leave, that's the end of the session. But me, Saddam, and I are here for the next 5-10 minutes. So anybody who has a question can definitely stay. Okay. Thank you very much, Khurram. Thank you.
Thank you, Khurram.
I think at the end it's only going to be people's AI tools, the note keeping ones, and it's just us hanging out together.
Yeah. If anyone have any question, you can always unmute your mic and ask your question.
No worries. Again, our email IDs are there, so if anyone just feels the need to discuss anything, we're more than happy to receive that email. I think we'll just give it another minute and then we can then call it a day.
Yes, I think Talha have some questions, I think. I think you can end the recording meanwhile.
I will stop the recording. Perfect.